Welcome to another episode of Charros y Clásicos, a Basque Strings podcast. I'm your host, Miguel Gutierrez, and as always, I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Joel Ozuna.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another episode of Charros y Clásicos. Our next guest is a native from Edinburgh, Texas. He holds degrees from Rice University and the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. He was first prize winner of the 2018 Cynthia Woods Mitchell Young Artist Competition and a semi-finalist in the 2021 Sphinx Competition. He's currently performing with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Please welcome Andrés Vela.
Thank you all so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, first off, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
How'd you spend it? With your family?
Yeah, spend it with my family. I've been down here I got here, I think, on the 23rd or something like that.
23rd.
Yeah, with all the travel
How was that?
craziness. It was crazy. Yeah, I usually fly Southwest, and because it's like a base thing.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm not going to bring my bass home when I come down, just because I want to spend it with my family and sort of just hang out. So I was like, I'm not going to bring my bass. So I decided that I'd fly with a different airline, American, and it turns out that they were the airline with the least canceled flights.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I mean, very, very little. So I kind of lucked out, but I didn't because my flight I flew Boston, Dallas, McAllen. My flight from Boston to Dallas was delayed by 2 hours. So I missed my connecting flight to McAllen. So I had to spend the night in Dallas.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So, and it was very cold. It was like 20 degrees, but they did give me a hotel
Well, that's good.
and a meal voucher.
Wow.
So
okay.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
So what do you mean by Southwest? That's the...
So I've been flying Southwest for the last 4 years for literally only one reason. Most bass players, if not, I mean, I'm going to say most, fly Southwest because they have like an instrument policy that's like very sort of fixed. Yeah, if you fly with an instrument of that size, and the weight, they have like a sort of like a flat rate. They like $75. Doesn't matter.
Nice.
Does not matter. $75, and it never changes. And I didn't know about this for a very long time. And basically, sort of the problems that I always had to deal with, when flying with my bass was that, before that I was flying United with my bass. I flew Frontier, I flew American, and even international, like Lufthansa to Germany, like all these. So it was always this thing, like I'd show up at the airport and just pure anxiety because you didn't know like if they were going to be able to take your bass on the plane or not. And also, you didn't know how much they were going to charge you to fly your bass. So I was like in your head, I was like, oh, what's it going to be today? It's like, and it was always different. It was like one time they didn't charge me at all.
Wow.
They said, no, that's fine. Yeah. Just like a normal carry-on. And I guess, I don't even remember what the airline was, but it was like a normal sort of like checked-in bag. They're like, yeah, just bring it on, whatever. But then, you have on the flip side, the most they'd ever charged me to check in my bass was $400.
Ouch.
And that hurt because I was not expecting that. It was just like I just showed up and they made a big, fuss about it. They're like, oh, we don't know if we could take it on, and I had to bring it home with me. I was coming back from a festival. I think it was Aspen Music Festival, and so this was in Denver. And they were making a big fuss about it, and I'm trying really hard. I was like, I have to go home. They're like, you can't. They're like, well, if you want to take it with you, you can't fly with you can't fly with it. So essentially, saying like, you have to fly another time or figure it out. And so I was able, to bring it home at that cost, which just hurt. Yeah. So I heard about Southwest, and they're like, this is the airline for you. And for 4 years straight, it's been, very easy. I just show up. The people already know what's up. Just bring it up. They weigh it. They already know. They already know because, it's a bass player. Like all bass players sort of fly the same airline, and they just give you zero problems. And it's like traveling is already not fun. And then, you have to deal with the stress of like all this, these people sort of like not knowing anything about the instruments. It's like, you don't need that,
And then especially for bass players, I assume, because you don't know if it's going to arrive safely, right?
That's another thing. That's another thing. And look, even with Southwest, you've had, people had their instruments broken or lost. Like, I mean, you hear about it all the time. But that happens with, I think, with every airline. It's just like, it's just one of those things. Like, you
never know.
You never know. Like, you just kind of have to just do it. But Southwest just makes the process a little bit easier, and so I think it's worth it.
Good to know.
Yeah,
good to know. Like I was gonna say, you hear all these scary stories, and it's crazy.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, and as I especially if you don't have instrument insurance or anything like that. Your very expensive instrument gets broken. You can't play on it for a few months because it's getting repaired. It's just like, yeah, it's a risk. It's a risk for sure. That's why you got to make sure you get a good flight case.
Yeah.
You have it strapped nicely. Make sure there's no movement in there. So, yeah.
So you play with Boston Symphony.
Currently, I'm playing with the Boston Symphony. That's right.
That's amazing, man. Congratulations to
Thank you.
I mean, I haven't seen you in years, so
I know it's been.
Here's my congratulations
Thank
to
you.
you on
Thank
that.
you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about that. Your time there. How did you get there?
So yeah, absolutely. So I was finishing up my degree at Rice University. I graduated this past May, so May 2022, and I'd taken a few auditions because that's just what I think most grad performance students do. They take a few auditions in their during their degree, to try to win a job or just have something, like basically looking for the next thing. And so I'd taken a few auditions, or I was taking a few auditions, and nothing really worked out. But I was just taking auditions. I was like, hopefully something works out. And the Boston, I saw like a flyer, or I don't remember. I saw a flyer, or if I ever heard about it from my teacher, but it might have been from my teacher actually. He said, "Hey, Boston Symphony like just announced this fellowship. It's a diversity fellowship. You should do it." And so, I looked into it a little bit more, and I thought like, what a sort of great way to just go from
transition from
it's a beautiful, great transition. Like, finish school. I did Tanglewood, which is with the Boston Symphony. It's like graduate, go to Tanglewood, do the summer festival as like a fellow, and then move to Boston and play with the Boston Symphony. I thought like that would have been super cool. So they announced, I think in maybe March of 2022 that they were going to hold. They were accepting applications for this. And so yeah, I submitted an application. There was like a video round. So I recorded a few excerpts, maybe 6 or 7 excerpts and a solo, and and then like other sort of application materials that they asked for. They have like these like short answer response like question and response, and that was basically it. So I sent my video recording in, and probably heard back maybe in like 2 weeks or something, and they had invited, I think, 10 of us for a live audition round, which was held, I think, sometime in late April. So I went there for literally one day, and yeah, I went there, and they had like a semifinal round where all 10 of us sort of played one after the other, and then they came back and they said the committee would like to hear these 3 people. We were all in like a room just waiting to hear, because the committee deliberates, and they said, they'd like to hear these 3 people, and I was very surprised to hear my name. I was like, okay, cool, because I honestly I thought I didn't. I thought I played well, but I think during one of the excerpts I made just like a really sort of bad mistake, and I just thought it's over,
Yeah.
So I'm there sitting, I'm like, no, it's not gonna happen. And then they come out and they're like, oh, they want to hear again. I was like, oh my god. So yeah, so they brought the 3 of us out, not at the same time, like again, one after the other. And at this point, the committee like chose not to be screened.
Okay.
So, there's
no screen. So they're
screen.
seeing you.
They're seeing you. Yeah. So you have like your music director of the Boston Symphony, Andrés Nelsons, and maybe like 8 other sort of members of the orchestra. And I believe like the vice president of it was something, just not like a musician was there. Yeah. Just looking at you while you play all these excerpts, and yeah, and so I played. They ask for a few things. You play something, and they're like, "Can you play it again? But maybe try it like this," or play. Can you play it a little bit faster? Can you? They just ask for things. To sort of see if you can like adapt on the spot or whatever. And they like it when you do, I think, from what I've heard, if you can like sort of just do what they want on the spot, like that's like a plus, and, so I finished playing. I thought I did as well as I could. And, they came out and, they told me and the viola player, that we'd got the fellowships, and I was like, all right,
nice.
Cool. Wow. I was like, yeah, so I got something lined up, And
then this happened during the summer, right?
This happened in April. And before that, it was like all these things going through my head. I was like, just trying to figure out the next thing, and it was either like one of these things worked out like this, or like maybe win a job, or I come back home, because I didn't want to really stay in the Houston area. I was like, why would, like, I don't know, staying in Houston, like paying for rent, like just being kind of like, on my own. So in a sense, when I can just like come home when it's like 4 or 5 hours away, and just, not have to pay for rent, and as far as like work, I really am not sure what I was going to do about that, because like there's really like no like gigs and stuff here. Like I was like in Houston, I was subbing with the Houston Symphony, and like I was doing like this church gig like every week, and so there's just like
your variety was bigger.
Yeah, exactly. The work sort of gig scene is a lot. It's a bigger city, so there's just a lot more opportunities. So that part was nice, but I mean auditions are expensive, very expensive. So. Yeah, I just that was not the plan for me after school. I think I was very sure that I was not going to stay in Houston. I was like, it's either I come back home and I figure something out here as far as like work and keep taking auditions, or one of these things works out. And luckily,
it did.
It did. Yeah.
Nice.
So that's just how I ended up in.
Well, that's a big accomplishment. That's something that
thank you.
I think all of us are very proud.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Wow, good job.
Yeah, I think ever since, we heard of you being an all-stater back when you were in high school, we all knew that there was something in your future that like this, of this magnitude. Let's talk about that. So why did you choose bass?
Going back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Why did I choose bass? I think I was mentioning to you, like I've done like interviews and stuff, people ask me just all kinds of things, and that's always one of the questions, like why bass? And I have no reason. Like it wasn't like, as a kid I was like I wanted to play bass and like that's all I ever wanted to do. Like that wasn't the case at all. I think from what I can remember, it was as a 5th grader, we went on like a school field trip, and we got to, I don't remember if it was like a high school or something that we went to. And essentially it was a bunch of 5th graders. And maybe they still do this to this day. They bring like the 5th grade class to see, and then they get all the high school arts, like choir, band, to sort of like showcase, the arts, and because, you come into middle school and you sort of have an option of, being in one of these things. And so I do remember that very clearly. And I remember liking orchestra and theater the best. And so essentially when the time came to make that choice, I was an incoming 6th grade student. You're only allowed to be in one extracurricular activity. So I actually listed theater as my number one and orchestra as my number two.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was in theater arts in sixth grade for 2 months before I started in orchestra. So I actually started orchestra late in my year. So, but essentially what happened was, I was going to this theater class and there was 20 students in that class and I was the only guy. And so it was me and like 19 girls, and the teacher was a girl. And there's, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think at the time, I don't know, for me, I felt out of place. And, I just thought that, I was like, maybe this isn't it for me, And so I went to go get a schedule change. I talked to, whoever it is that you talk to for that kind of stuff. I don't remember. And, so I showed up. I showed up with this person. It's like, oh, I'd like to change, to orchestra. And they're like, yeah, of course. So yeah, it was maybe 2 months into the school year. It was like October. And I was able to get my schedule changed. And I showed up and knocked on the orchestra director's door, Mr. Menendez, Juan Carlos Menendez.
Yes.
And yeah, he opened the door and I said, hey, I'm here to be in your class. And he's like, oh, great. He's like, we need players. And I was like, well, great. This is great. And then he said, I don't remember if it was right then in that moment, but at some point he asked what I wanted to play. And I said, I essentially, I didn't have a preference because I knew nothing about anything about music. I don't know. And he said, well, we need bass players. He's like, I guess no one wanted to play bass. And I mean, I get it, but I didn't care, and I don't recall if I was the only bass player or if there was maybe one other bass player in that class when I came in, but they just needed bass players. So he's like, you want to play bass? And yeah, I was like, sure.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And that was basically it. It wasn't me chasing the bass or, it was very simple, it's just like, yeah, just play. I think I just wanted to play an instrument,
Mm-hmm.
And I think anything would have, probably, or just playing an instrument would have been better than, what I was doing in that class, in theater class. So that's sort of how I ended up in orchestra. Yeah, exactly.
So what was your first big accomplishment in the bass?
In the bass, my very first big accomplishment. So I started taking lessons in 7th grade with Omar Estrella, and it was on and off. I was not a very great student. And
were these school provided, or you sought him out, or
no? This was school provided. I think from what I recall, Mr. Menendez came up to me and said, like, would you like to take lessons, or maybe he, or maybe he was just coming in and helping out the basses. I don't recall very clearly, but he was there nonetheless, and he, worked with us. But I don't think that I was, at that time, and as a 7th grader, was willing to work that hard. And essentially, Omar, I think, ended up leaving, and so I was left with no teacher. And 8th grade year comes around, and this all region. The all region orchestras, and I started learning more about that. And my teacher sort of like, pushing me to audition for all region. He's like, because, I guess he saw potential. And I thought that I needed someone's, guidance. So I asked him, I essentially asked him to ask Mr. Estrella if he'd come back. And, I'd pull in I would go all in, 100%. And so he did. He came back, and we worked on the excerpts and stuff, and we had the all region auditions, and I got first chair. That was my first sort of big accomplishment at the time. Yeah. So yeah, that was I would say that's my first sort of big thing, just like, oh, like there's all these bass players that showed up, and you show up first on the list. You're like, it's kind of cool, but yeah, I would say that's my first.
How long were you with Omar?
I was with Omar for, I guess not counting my 7th grade year, just because it was like very on and off. I was with him until the end of my sophomore year. Yes, sir. A few years. Yeah, I would say.
Wow, it's a while.
Yeah, it's a little while. Yeah.
So when did you first make All-State?
So I made All-State as a freshman.
I remember that.
Yeah, I made All-State as a freshman. Again, I didn't know much about All-State. It was just something that it's like, I knew that it was a bigger deal, and I think I was just enjoying playing. I was just enjoying playing, and I really didn't feel like I was, being forced to do all this stuff. It was like really just out of pure enjoyment. I spent all of my years in orchestra. I never went to lunch class. I would go get my lunch, and I'd bring it to the orchestra room, and I'd eat my lunch in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then I would practice the rest of the time, because that was my practice time. Before I would practice before school, before a class started, and then after school, the first thing I did after that, the bell rang. This was in both middle school and high school, every single year. The bell rang, and the first thing I did, I'd go to orchestra class and I'd play a little bass. It was just, so yeah, I was doing all these things just because I just liked to do it, and I liked playing. And so as far as All-State goes, I was working with Omar on these excerpts and etudes, and I was also going to the All-State workshops that Dr. Amorim was holding at UTPA at the time. And so it was just nice to have the both of them sort of give their help and advice on a lot of these things. And I auditioned, and I got in. and it was like, I don't know, I think it was like a very big thing, just because I think freshmen typically don't make it to the All-State Orchestra, just because it's like like middle school, our region, and then you go as a freshman, and then you're all of a sudden competing with seniors and juniors who've been playing much longer than you have. So I think freshmen are really not expected to make it into these orchestras, especially like the top orchestras, which I made the top orchestra my freshman year. So it was like a big moment, and I think I don't think I realized how big of a deal that was. I was just like, again, I was just like doing it because I liked playing bass. Like that was, and so yeah, so I had people around me like sort of like, oh, like this big, making it like this big thing, but I never saw it like that. I only got in, and I did it, and just because I liked playing bass. That was literally the only thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a crazy way to put it, or interesting way to put it. It was just sheer love of what you're doing.
Yeah, that's all it was. Even the competitiveness about it. I don't think that I truly felt the competitive part of it until maybe in my later years of high school. Like as a freshman, as a sophomore, it was just like, it was just mostly this, just like, I like playing bass, and I like working on these excerpts, I like working on these etudes, and I just like, playing, and, audition comes around, I just do it, I get in, I'm like, cool, I get to go on a little trip, and then, we do the whole, the TMEA convention, you know what that's about. But I think definitely my junior year, I guess I was a little bit more, like it hurt a little bit more when, like, because I guess I was so used to like doing so well that it hurt when I didn't. And that's when the competitiveness started to kick in, and it wasn't like a toxic competitiveness. It was just like, it's like, oh man, like I want to top. Like for me, it was like I want to top every year. Like I want to do better than the previous year.
Yeah.
And or I want to, I want to see my name higher on that list. I don't know. I created these goals for myself, and it was just a way for me to really just push myself, and because you don't like seeing yourself sort of be like stagnant, you want to just keep going up.
Yeah.
Just want to keep going up. So I think that's when the competitiveness really started to kick in my later high school years. And yeah, I made All-State all 4 years, and my last year as a senior, it was my last shot, and I hadn't been first chair in the top orchestra. And I remember the list came out, and I was third on the list. And we go there, and they have re-auditions. And so we re-auditioned, and then I jumped up to first chair.
Nice.
So I made that like a super, I don't know, I made that a goal. I was like, I want to do this, and I want to, and I was able to. I was able to sit principal in the top orchestra, which is really cool.
So you were able to achieve your goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. Yeah. So that was really cool. Yeah.
When did you decide to pursue it professionally, like in school? Immediately when you graduated, you knew this is what I'm going to do, or
when I graduated, yes, I knew. I think that if you'd asked me maybe in my junior year, because people did ask me in my junior year, I was always like, I'm not sure, because you just, I don't know, at the time you don't know anything, you really, you don't know. I mean, I didn't, it was like, no one really sort of like talks to you about like life as a musician and at the university level, or, I didn't know about auditioning to, going and flying to, auditioning for Juilliard or auditioning for Colburn, all these big schools. I didn't know about any of those schools until I was in my undergrad. Through like, doing summer festivals, and which I did and have done every summer since 2015.
Wow.
Every summer I've gone and done things and played with people that go to these schools. So that's sort of how I learned about it. But I think, I was just in my head. It was something that, as a junior in high school, I didn't want to think about, I was like, I'll think about it when I have to make that decision, or
I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
Exactly. So, my senior year, I think I was interested in like other things. And, I think one of those things was I was interested in like in medicine, actually, in like the medical field. And so I was taking a bunch of like, I took like a health science class, and so as part of that class, we had to like volunteer at a hospital. So I was at a hospital volunteering, and I also volunteered at a hospice.
Oh, wow.
They call it volunteering, but it you were a student, and essentially you went there and like you shadowed and like you just helped out. But it was very hands-on, very, very hands-on. And, I got to see a lot of stuff, especially like, the hospice. And as much as I was interested, in that, and as much as I liked helping people out, and I was like, I don't know if this is like fun, and I just, and I was like, I really have fun playing bass. And so that was sort of what kind of guided my decision to
study bass.
To study bass. And I think what I graduated high school, and at this point I was very sure that like I was doing bass. I was gonna go to UTRGV, continue bass. But I think what really sealed it for me when I realized like, I think this is for sure what I want to do was the summer after my senior year, I did the National Youth Orchestra of the USA. And so we got to go, I played at Carnegie Hall, and we got to go on tour to China, went to seven different cities in China. And it was like a month-long sort of thing. And it was like my first time traveling. It was my first time being out of the country. It was my first time this. It was like, and, meeting people from all over the country, people my age who also play on the same level, who also are very passionate about music. And, they're just serious musicians. And I was like, wow. I was like, it was so cool. It was like,
you found your passion.
Yeah, I did. And it was emotionally, it was like, I just felt all kinds of ways, it was like so much so that like, I remember our last stop was in Hong Kong, and, we were in Hong Kong, and that would be the last time that we would all see each other, because, people were, some people were in the orchestra where their families are from China. So like a lot of them were flying back to China, or, some people just had different, they were flying home essentially, we were not flying back to New York where
you're flying to your destination.
So I was flying back home, so that would be the last time. And I remember just like, the bass players are always like really close, and I just remember being at the airport and all 10 of us are just crying together. It was like, we're in a circle, and it was just like, I don't know, just, crying and just like really just talking about how like, how much of a pleasure it was to like play with them in a section and to get to know them in such a short amount too, like a month, but like the connection that we build like through music and just through, all these things, like it was a really crazy feeling for me. And like, I'd never done anything like it, and I was like, wow, like I want to be able to do this like many, many other times. And so I think that's what did it for me. Yeah, for sure.
And when you graduated from high school, you said you went to UTRGV.
That's right. Yeah.
What made you choose UTRGV? Were there other schools that you were thinking of going?
No. Well, that's the thing. Like I didn't really get it. Like I didn't really know. Like, before doing this, the National Youth Orchestra thing, like I didn't, I didn't hear people talk about, like flying to these schools to audition. Like I just didn't. So I had obviously a great teacher, Dr. Amorim, and it felt easier, just like, oh, I'm going to go to school in my hometown, and stay close with, your family and stuff. And so it wasn't really a hard decision at all, like have a great teacher, have great colleagues. And, that's really, I think, all you really need to really, get to the next level, just work yourself up. And so I had that, and that's why it wasn't hard at all. And that's why I went there.
And then earlier you said that when we were speaking behind the scenes, that you studied with Dr. Amorim for 8 years?
Yeah, I think just about 8 years. Or maybe a little bit less, maybe 7 years. I don't remember exactly, but I've sort of been like associated with him, through his students and, through his classes that I would attend since 6th grade. Because in 6th grade, I went to Viva el Bajo, the annual festival that he did. So in 6th grade I knew him then, I just didn't start really working with him one-on-one until later in my high school years. But yeah, I've essentially known, him since I started playing bass.
Wow. So after UTRGV, then you decide to go to graduate school.
That's right. Yeah. So at this point, I'm in my senior year. Me and Dr. Amorim always had, great conversations about, sort of like, things that I should be, do. And this was one of the things, like, he's like, you need to do graduate school. And I think that at the time I was like, oh man, I don't know if I can do school anymore. I was just like,
Burned out.
Yeah, it was a lot, especially my last year at UTRGV. It was, I graduated in 4 years. I was not supposed to graduate in 4 years. I was supposed to graduate in 5 years. But I sort of felt like time was sort of like ticking for me. And I just remember really loading up my last year just so that I can graduate. I think that I took my last 2 semesters, I took 18 credit hours, and then my last semester I took 21, which you're not even allowed to do. I had to get special permission for that. And then on top of that, I had to do these grad school applications, which are very tedious, super long. You have to, write a bunch of stuff. You have to prepare your video recordings. So yeah, it was a lot going on. And I thought, I thought about maybe like the what if I didn't, and it just didn't make no sense. So I was like, no, I have to do it. I have to do graduate school. So I picked 5 schools that I was, interested in. Because at this point, I already know about schools and because, I've gone places and talked to people and, talked to some of these teachers. So at this point, I knew sort of more or less what I was interested in. So I had 5 schools that I was interested in. And yeah, I did all the applications for that. And then I did live auditions. I didn't live audition to all the schools. But I auditioned live to the ones that I was more interested in. So I auditioned for Rice University, and that was certainly one of my top schools. And I went there and I auditioned for the 2 bass professors there. And I was very happy to find out a few weeks later that I got in, which was super, super nice. I was like, I get to stay in Texas, close to home, and go to such a great school, great classical sort of music school. Yeah.
And how long were you there at Rice?
I was there 3 years. 3 years, yeah. I was supposed to do 2 years, but then because of the pandemic, I got a call during the summer of 2020, and it was just, basically saying, hey, we're offering your incoming class or your class a third year if they'd like, or if you'd like to take the third year, because the pandemic sort of messed with the orchestra. We didn't have orchestra for an entire year, and a big part of that school is the orchestra training, and we weren't going to have that for a year. So, which means that we'd only get it for 1 year, So I think that I think they wanted to make sure that we really got what, we wanted, So I said yes. So, and it was the best decision, that I could have done, taking that third year. So yeah, I was there for 3 years.
So how did the pandemic affect you professionally, though? When you were up there, yeah.
Professionally, I mean, yeah.
No gigs, right?
No gigs. There was no orchestra, no chamber music, lessons, because they were one-on-one. We did do in person, and even that was a sort of very a personal choice. My teacher, that's what he decided to do, that we'd have one-on-one lessons in person, obviously with mask and distance. But other teachers didn't want to do that. So they did Zoom, which we also attempted, but it's just
not the same.
It's just not the same. It's really not the same. So yeah, it was very difficult, very super difficult. During that time, it was just mostly so the pandemic hit, and they basically said, all of you have to go home. This was March of 2020. And so I came home, and I was, here for until August. That's when I went back for the next school year. Yeah, so during that time, from March 2020 to August, I was just home. I was just practicing. I got COVID in June. It was really bad. But yeah, I was just practicing. I'd gone into the Tanglewood Music Festival that summer. I was supposed to go in person that summer. Obviously, it didn't happen, but we did like a virtual festival, and every sort of instrument had like their projects. So we did. I worked on a few things during that summer, which was really great. We did like a Bach project where the 7 of us, like cumulatively, would record 2 full cello Bach suites. So that was super neat. We also did a composition project. This festival has a composition studio, and I think 6 or 7. So essentially, we teamed up with them, and what happened was they paired us up, like one bass player, one composition student, and in a span of maybe 2.5, 3 weeks, they had to write a piece for solo bass, and we had to perform it as well. And at the end of the 3 weeks, they would, we'd have like a virtual concert, where all the performances are showcased. And I thought that was really cool, super cool. And it was very hard. But it was very rewarding, just to be able to do things when all this sort of crazy stuff was happening, was super neat. But yeah, so I was very, very happy to be doing that. And then, like I said, I went back to school in August, and things were still, a lot of things were still on Zoom, and, just working around this thing, just COVID, it was super hard, but we made it work, I think. And I think the school, like Rice, did like fantastic job in just like dealing with the whole COVID thing, like just, it was amazing. Like they had like all these testing centers, and everything was just super organized, providing spaces for students to go and quarantine. This is more for like undergraduate students, like people who lived on campus. They'd have these rooms for people to quarantine so that they wouldn't pass COVID to their roommates or whatever. It was super, super nice to have. And then when the vaccines came around, they were like, we have like 5,000 vaccines, like, and they prioritized obviously like their staff and older people, but eventually the students were able to get vaccinated. A lot of us got vaccinated through the university. Wow. Which is super cool. Like before, people could get them, which is kind of crazy. Wow. But yeah.
Dang, it was a very, very bad time.
Yeah,
for sure. And it's just interesting how all these areas, were affected by it. We've asked everyone else, like, how did it affect you or what? And
yeah,
that's hearing your side of the story. It's just, dang.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very difficult. But like I said, it was productive too, It was like I was still playing, because I also found like, peace in playing, I was like, it's very easy to, I mean, it was very easy in that time to just like get yourself in like a very, the kind of dark headspace, just thinking about things. And, I just found that like just playing was just kind of
like meditation.
Yeah, exactly. Meditation. I would practice outside of my house. Yeah. It was like warm, I think. Or no, it was hot. What am I saying? It was kind of hot, but I don't know. There's something about just like playing outside that I really liked, and that was my practice room for like a month. I was practicing outside my patio, just like in the open air.
Nice.
which was super nice. Well, because you're inside your house the entire day.
you just want to get out.
You just want to get out, like, and do stuff, but you couldn't. You know, you like, even going to the store, like, my mom was like, "No, don't go." You're like, "I'll go," and she, to put like, the whole gloves on, and like, she'd come home with groceries, and we had to like disinfect all the stuff with like Clorox wipes, and just like, she didn't want us to go like anywhere, just because my parents are, they're older and like high risk, and there was no vaccines at the time, so there was like
a scary time.
It was a scary time. It was a scary time. So yeah, like I couldn't really go anywhere, so I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go outside and just play my bass.
Now that you bring up your parents, so where have they been in this entire career of yours when it comes to your choice of playing? Like, did they support you? Obviously they did.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I obviously, without a doubt, would not be here if it wasn't for the support. Like, I feel like I owe everything that I ever did because of them. From taking me to, my lessons during non-school hours to, obviously financially they helped me out. They bought me an instrument. Like, obviously the financial and also the emotional, like this whole path obviously has not been perfect, and I don't think anybody's is, I have my tough times too, to this day. I have my tough times, and it's very hard, to just like, kind of deal with that, and just to be able to like talk to them and then be like, just very sort of parental advice, but very useful. Is like, just everything's gonna work out. Like, don't, like, you're young. They always say like you're super young. You're 25. You have like your whole life ahead of you, and like they're right. Like, but I think for me it's just like, like, for some reason, I feel like pressure to just like get to where I want to be, to have that job, to have this, and I haven't exactly gotten there yet, and because I haven't, it's just very easy to just like forget these other voices and just be like, oh, I feel like a failure because I'm 25 and I haven't done this yet, and but yeah, so it's just always nice to just have them and just talk to him, and it's like, yeah, you're gonna be fine. Like, I'm not worried, like, you just keep working, keep practicing, like, and things will work out. So I always have to have their opinions and their voice, just to have a peace in your mind. Yeah.
What's now that you bring this up, this theme of imperfection?
Yeah.
So what would you say was the biggest challenge you faced in your path?
Oh man,
that you've had to overcome.
Yeah. I think the notion of, I think the biggest thing is when it comes to performance, like performing, like for a very long time, I had like this thing where I'd, in a performance, I'd make a mistake, and I would make a few mistakes, maybe even more than a few mistakes, right? And I would sort of in the middle of the performance just like give up and almost not like stop playing, but like just lose interest, because I felt that like making mistakes took away from the experience, and I think it's very different, seeing it from a audience perspective than like your own perspective. And I just always sort of had like this in my head, this, you have to play every single note, you have to play perfect, you have to not make any mistakes so that people could enjoy your performance. That was my thing. It was like, if I made a mistake or two, in my head I'm like, oh, people notice those mistakes, so they're not enjoying my performance. So I also lost interest in my music or in my music making. And that I think that was I think that was one of the hardest things for me to really accept, is that it's never going to be perfect. It's just never going to be perfect. And as much as I want it to, it's just not. But I always, there's nothing wrong with, trying to, make it perfect, but I'm very much okay with making mistakes these days, because there's a whole lot of other things that, people look for, not just making mistakes, and I think at the end of the day is, in a performance, is if the audience, is able to connect with you, even through your mistakes. But like, it could be a 4-bar phrase that they heard in your performance, and they were like, those were the best 4 bars I've ever heard or seen in my life, and that they never forget those 4 bars. It could be very small, but like, if there's at least one thing, and I think most of the time there certainly is at least one thing that like somebody could take from your performance and be like, wow. So I think that obviously over the years, I've made a ton of mistakes. I've failed many times. Like it's insane. Like, I'm still like, I swear I fail every month at things. So like, these failures became more frequent, so I became more okay with them. And to just, but within all these failures, that you have your successes too, it's just like, it's just this, like, like a battle, it's just like, you're going to have successes, you're going to have a lot of failures, just kind of just keep doing you keep working to what you want, And I also look at, and I also listen to other people, do these kinds of things, podcasts, musicians who already, who I look up to, who are already in professional, settings, and just hear them talk. And, they also didn't have a perfect, they also, failed, people, all these people I'm sure have failed at things, and, they're fine now, So I try to remind myself of those things too. That everything's going to turn out okay, and just got to keep practicing and keep trying to be better at bass, and keep trying to inspire, people, audiences through playing.
And now that you're not playing with the Boston Symphony, what is that like?
Playing with the Boston Symphony? Oh man. Oh, it's really great. It's really great. Obviously, one of the like most known orchestras in the world, I would say. But playing in the orchestra is amazing. They have a very beautiful space, probably one of the best halls I've ever performed in. Their audience are just super excited always about our concerts. Doesn't matter the program. They just love music, and it's always every concert I've done is always full house. The 2,000 people just hearing us and listening to us, and I just love what we get from them. It's just like
the energy that they
the energy. We go there and when we play, and then we get to see their reaction like this. It's very fulfilling thing. But also playing with in the section with I've never played in a section with 10 bass players. So that's always, we play stuff like Shostakovich or like Mahler, and you get this amazing, just powerful bass sound with 10 basses. And that's super cool too, and everyone's, very nice and stuff. So it's just, I'm still sort of trying to build relationships with a lot of these people. But the people that I have, spoken to and spent some time with has been very, very nice.
Wow. Well, in a way, you kind of already answered my next question, but I was going to ask if you had any words of inspiration for young listeners that want to pursue music or the bass.
Right.
Like, what would you tell them?
I think if you, well, I would say that it is difficult. It's very difficult to pursue music, but I think that I would imagine that it's difficult to pursue anything, because, I've heard, I've met a lot of people, and, people will complain about just their work, regardless about if it's what they love or what they don't love. But I think that anything you choose to pursue is difficult, but I think that for me, like, I didn't really see myself doing anything else, and that despite it being difficult, at the end of the day, like, I really enjoy playing bass. And so I don't know if that really answers your question, but I would say, if for students who, want to pursue music, that, like, if it's something that they really feel that is their calling, so to speak, like, go for it. Just do it. Even if there's all these sort of questions in the air, just if you really enjoy music and you like playing, and you don't see yourself really doing anything else, like, I would say just go for it. Just do it and find out for yourself. Another thing is, like, I think that a lot of people look at other people's sort of paths in music, and everybody has a different path, so, like, don't let other people's, sort of paths through music sort of, like, decide what you do or what you end up doing. Sort of, if you like music, find out yourself, go through it and put in 100%. Yeah, I think it's beautiful. Playing instrument and playing music is beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for those kind words. I think a lot of people will agree. I agree with what you're saying. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
So I think that's all the time we have for today, right?
Thank you again, Andres.
Yeah, no problem at all. No problem at all.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, appreciate it.